Today I want to explore the question of, can machines think? Can machines do the thinking that humans supposedly do? And this is an important question, as we've seen that artificial intelligence, we've seen something like GPT-3, and a lot of mostly artificial intelligence that seem like machines are now thinking, right? And so I wanted to explore that question today. So can machines think? So before we answer that question, we need to identify what is thinking, what is actually thinking. And if I've come to the conclusion that thinking isn't a thing that is either A or B, but rather it's something that depends on the degree. So for instance, let me give an example. I would say that a person doing a math problem would be doing a lot of thinking. Let's say that a child is trying to multiply 2 times 2, which would be 4. And in the process, you have to do some thinking. However, a machine trying to multiply 2 times 2 would not necessarily be thinking, because it was programmed to do so. So in that case, machines are not thinking. And when we get to the point, we see that there are 2 types of thinking, and there are thinking levels. And something that we need to understand is that we shouldn't necessarily be too overly concerned trying to be either all AI or all humans, and rather have the combination of the 2, because the 2 can do 2 different types of thinking. So now that we know what is thinking and what is not thinking, and depending on who is doing the thinking, therefore we can identify what thinking is, right? So when we know what thinking is, we can then talk about what, and answer the questions, can machines think? And here's what I think. So I'm not going to tell you my answer explicitly, but I'm going to explore the 2 scenarios. So let's go with let's say yes. Can machines think? And if they do, if they can think, that would mean that humans would be pretty useless in the work field, and that's not necessarily, we're going to see a future that a lot of people are expecting, like the future that we see in the movies and stuff like that. And thinking is very subjective, like I said when I defined what is thinking. So I think something that we need to understand here is that, can machines think? Yes, of course they can. Can machines do the type of human thinking? Yes, no, we don't necessarily know, because we often don't understand how we ourselves work, and sometimes we need to understand how we ourselves work in order to program to program a computation, a list of instructions to do X. So for example, a machine is basically programmed to do a multiplication. But a machine, it would be a lot harder to program a machine to do something like identify. When you talk about problems like this, because it gets into what is programmable and what is not, and that usually goes into the science of who we are. So that's something that is also really important. But defining, so can machine think would be yes, and if the answer is yes, does that mean that all things can be programmed? And then if the answer is no, can do machine think, or they just follow instructions of the program, we can see that when people say that machines cannot think, they usually bring religious texts or they bring some type of religion or some type of belief that they say that humans are better for some reason, which is also important to consider, but that might not necessarily be 100% accurate. So something here is that if we think that machines do not think, that would be ignoring what AI could achieve and what AI could accomplish, and definitely having a different future. So I wanted to explore this idea because I think it's an idea that is very, very interesting, because it's as much such a problem in computer science and artificial intelligence as it is a problem in science, neuroscience, and what it means to be a human. Because when you identify what it means to be a human, you also identify what it means to think. And when you identify what it means to think, you're really going down to the fundamental level of what makes us us. And that's something that very few people know, and I think not a lot of people actually know the answer to that question. I think some scientists say that we know more about the universe than we know about our brains, and I think that is very true. And I think if we actually want to have a future when this is really important. When we think about the future of AI and artificial intelligence and technology and the singularity and all of those terms, we need to think about how we can actually bring the two together, humans and artificial intelligence, because the two do two different types of thinking, that the two together would be substantially better for us, for the future, and for the world as a whole. So, can machine think? I'm not gonna tell you my answer. I would encourage you to think and go and explore that answer and come up with your answer for yourself. But I think this is a bad question because it traps you into answering something that we don't know, which is thinking, because we don't know what thinking really is. So when it comes to thinking about artificial intelligence and the future of those fields, it's important to understand that we shouldn't try to be choosing what's better than the other, but rather trying to find ways to combine the two, some type of symbiosis. I think some type of combination between the two, so we can both thrive as both humanity and both as a world, and that's something that would seriously need to think about. If you're wondering how I thought about this question, is because I'm reading a book about the art of doing science and engineering, and the author is Richard Hamming, and he was talking about and giving certain examples and everything about what it means to think and what it means for computers to do and what computers cannot do and the limits of AI and all of that. Highly recommend the book. All right, that would be all. Thank you.